Hi, I'm Christina Rodenbeck from the Oxford Astrologer, and I'm here with my great friend Sally Kirkman. Hello,
Hi,
Sally.
hello, hi,
Um,
Christina and everyone.
and together we are Astrology Talk, uh, the podcast.
Mhm.
And as you probably know, we meet every month, and we talk about the month ahead. And this month we're going to talk about Sagittarius season, which begins at the end of November and goes on till just before Christmas. But before we get there,
Hmm.
Sally, we need to talk about what's just happened.
We have. She laughs. I have to say, I know we're talking about Sagittarius season. I feel kind of very energized. I need to sort of, ground a little. There's a lot of energy around.
Mm,
And we have been talking all about this past month. On a personal level, it's been very, very busy, Scorpio season. It has been blooming head down, bum up.
mm.
With work, and I'm looking forward to a break in Sagittarius season. But of course, we cannot not talk about what's happened
Yeah.
in the US of A.
Mm, mm. That some guy won. There was an election there. That's what I hear.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Who was he? Who was he?
What?
Was he
What
Donald?
happened?
Donald
Yeah.
something?
Donald something. Yeah. Um. One
Yeah.
thing. So I think that we can safely say that uh, that well, what can we safely say? Well, basically, it. I will confess, I thought it was going to be so much closer.
Yeah.
Um, I thought it was going to be closer. We talked about it before, and we both had a nasty feeling because neither of us are Trump supporters that Donald Trump might edge was going to could edge it because his astrology is phenomenal and always is. And we did mention in April that his astrology is really, really good and hard
Yeah.
to April or May, I can't remember which one of those podcasts.
Mm.
But neither of us, we have not really wanted to put our toe in the water of that prediction,
Mm.
have we?
No, no, we haven't. I mean, I think whenever, but just to sort of say what his astrology has been, we had the Jupiter Uranus conjunction. I think it was in April, wasn't it, in Taurus, which was on his midheaven, the career point in his chart, the pinnacle of his chart. And often that coincides with a time of social change. I mean, we talked about it in relation to the UK government with Labour getting in, this social change. And there was that. And then, of course, it means that Jupiter's now been in Gemini, his sun sign, moving through his career sector again. Okay.
Yeah.
If he was a
Yeah.
client and you didn't know who he was, you would say this is a time where he's going to be profile, isn't he? He's going to be major profile. He's going to be out there. He's going to be popular. Um, and the key one, because Kamala and Trump had such similar, they've got very similar astrology in a
So,
way, so similar
mm,
transits. But the big one for him was Jupiter on his North Node in Gemini in the 10th house, a kind of moment of destiny. And for me, there was, oh God, that looks really good. I did think maybe he'll lose and then there'll be some other
yeah.
destiny path playing out, ends
We
up
had
in
one hoped.
prison.
Yeah,
Mm.
prison.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, completely. And it's important that people know that they do have some similar
Mm.
stuff. So some of
Mm.
these transits, this is why it was quite close from an astrological point of view. But the kicker was Jupiter. He's an eclipse person. He's born on an eclipse,
Mm.
very, very,
Mm.
very tight. And Jupiter was on his eclipse point,
Yeah.
right? Um, so there you go, bam. And the one thing that we thought could happen was that he would overreach himself, which has happened at previous times when he
Yeah.
had that transit, right? Because it's
Yeah.
every 12 years he has that transit. It's not a once in a lifetime one.
Mm.
The once
Mm.
in a lifetime one was that Uranus Jupiter conjunction on his midheaven,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
again could have been overreaching, going too
Yeah.
far,
Yeah.
but it wasn't. It's getting into the White House. Um, so there we are. And, what do you think about making predictions about such a consequential thing when there's a choice for people, Sally?
I mean, we could spend an hour talking about this, really, couldn't we? You know, predictions. I know one of the things, I mean, there's an ethical side around predictions, isn't there? And I think it's
Yeah.
important when you're doing predictions, why are you doing it? I mean, something you've said that I found very kind of illuminating was, you know, predicting doesn't change the outcome. So why are you doing it in a way? You know, you've got to look at all of that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the thing with predictions is I think sometimes you end up falling into this right and wrong. I mean, we've seen this on social media when people say, I predicted that, you know, yay, I'm fantastic.
Mhm.
And they don't point out all the times when they made predictions, they didn't get them right. You know, they don't go, yeah, I was wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of in that, you know, as astrologers, I think that leaves us thinking, okay, what's it all about then?
Yeah.
When that happens. I mean, what's your view on it, Christina?
I think predictions, I know you've done a lot of like tennis predictions, and it's like, well, why not? That's fun.
Yeah.
That's good. You know, it's
Yeah.
fun and it's a
Mm,
game. But when
mm,
it's not a game, when it's very, very, very consequential, which this
mm,
election is, this is
mm.
not a game, guys. And I think that there's a tendency to make it into a game, an astrology game,
Yeah.
which is not, uh, it's just not good karma
Mm,
to turn it into an astrology game, because this is going to affect the entire planet. It's going
mm,
to affect,
mm,
it's not going
mm.
to have a good effect on many people,
Yeah.
including just women as a general group and minorities as a general group.
Mm,
It's
mm,
dangerous. What's
mm.
this the consequences of this are really big.
Yeah.
And the choice was very, in some ways, very stark,
Mm,
even though these are both establishment people from the American elite, so to speak. They're both elite choices. The choice was between Mars in the form of Donald Trump, who has Mars rising, and is a very Marsy person, and Venus in the form of Kamala Harris, who is very Venusian. She's a
yeah.
beautiful
And
woman.
she's beautiful. And she's a Sun Libra ruled by
Yeah,
Venus, you
ruled
know?
by
So,
Venus.
yeah.
Boom. That was
Yeah.
the choice. And it was a very stark choice. And
Yeah.
Americans made their choice,
Mm,
And I don't think that, I suppose if you were like doing some kind of speculation on the stock market or whatever, it's important for you to be making predictions, but that's not our job.
mm. Which is interesting you say that because a lot of people were speculating financially on Trump winning and
Yeah.
have made mega bucks. And this is, you know, this is also, I think, interesting because of what's happening with Pluto.
Yep.
Pluto was at its final stage in Capricorn during the election, making its final return to Capricorn. We've always talked about Pluto in Capricorn, about, you know, being the rise of the billionaires, being the plutocrats, you know, this sort of big power. And again, I think we always thought that Pluto moving into Aquarius would bring something new. But one of the things it's bringing is we're now going to have plutocrats who are tech billionaires, as Aquarius is the technology sign. So we're seeing, you know, it is kind of, you know, I think also there was this thing with Pluto leaving Capricorn. It would be the fall of the patriarchy on some
Haha.
level, on some level. But it's not, is it?
No, no. I
It
mean,
really isn't.
it really isn't. And I have to
Mm,
say that my heart sank when I
mm,
saw Elon Musk next to Donald Trump
mm,
at that rally, because I thought, oh, okay, that's the inauguration chart, which is a
mm.
conjunction of Pluto in Aquarius with the sun on the
Yeah.
midheaven of the chart. And that says to me that these tech billionaires are going to try and have a lot of power, because it's not just Musk, it's also JD Vance, the vice president, who is has been funded by Peter Thiel, who is another one of these Silicon Valley people with a huge amount of power. PayPal guys, that's him.
Mm, mm,
Plus, he has a lot of, I mean, incredibly to me, he has a lot of intellectual heft, because he's started the Stanford Review and he writes about um, a kind of philosophy of tech power. And I highly recommend that reading his essay on, it's not called The Making of a Libertarian, it's The Something of a Libertarian. I can put it in the notes underneath, to understand exactly where that guy is coming from. But I can quote it from memory, one line, which is, he says that freedom and democracy are incompatible. In paragraph 2, I think you'll find. He also says that death is an ideological, it's not necessarily a thing. It's just ideological. So he doesn't really believe in death as a thing, and he doesn't believe in democracy either.
Which is, again, really interesting with this symbolism, isn't it? Of Pluto into Aquarius. Pluto's god of the underworld. Aquarius, we've often thought of as this, there's more equality in Aquarius. He goes from the hierarchy of Capricorn to, ideally, this ideological world where things are shared out, where there is kind of freedom and democracy hand in hand.
Well, theoretically. Or that the power, it's a big power shift. And what's interesting, I mean, there's a very positive side to Pluto and Aquarius coming up, which is definitely this power to the people thing. I mean, we see kind of unions, more unionizing, etc. But, there's a negative side and a positive side to every single transit.
Yeah.
And every single planet has a whole panoply of symbolism.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And I just want to add with that, with Pluto, wherever Pluto is, it makes us aware of the dangers. So, we're seeing this already that, in Aquarius, it's the AI, it's the dominance of social media where everyone is finding their information. And it's and also the censorship. I mean, Elon Musk he owns one of our social media platforms, doesn't he? Twitter, now X. So it's going to be the censorship, the freedom of speech. I mean, people are finding their truth through social media, which is terrifying when you think about it. It's disinformation. It's not the truth. It's not real information. And that is going to increase and intensify with Pluto and Aquarius. So everyone needs to be really aware of that and not fall into that. Don't you think?
Absolutely. Can I tell you a story? I mean, one of my, I have a salon on once a month, and someone had it on this past Sunday, and one of the people there said that she was on YouTube, and she thought, oh, I'll just watch this video by Brene Brown. And she's watching, and she thought, that's a weird thing for Brene Brown to say. This seems very kind of unlikely. And it was a fake. It was a fake of Brene Brown. And you're like, why would you fake someone like that? Just to mess with people's heads? What is that about? So yes, there are a lot of fakes around. And and I actually think the destruction of social media is part of this Pluto in Aquarius, because Aquarius is a sign of, it's about networks of information. And we saw Pluto go into Aquarius earlier this year, and that's when pretty much somewhat the demise of X. It's still carrying on. I'm still on X.
Yeah, it's limping along.
It's limping along. And I have to say I'm very sad, because actually I found it an incredibly useful platform for finding out news and stuff. But and I'd never engage in those arguments, those Twitter things. And you can make your feed very nice, but we saw that the destruction of X almost right away, actually, and that was very significant, I think. So that's good. So basically, I think that we can predict probably that social media will be broken and then remade, because it's a phoenix thing. Pluto is a phoenix. It breaks things.
Yeah.
So last time it went into a sign was into Capricorn, right? The banks got broken because of the credit crunch. So it broke the banks, and then they were kind of remade. But I don't think we really took the opportunity to really, really remake capitalism, which was actually maybe what should have happened at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is going to be about tech.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? I mean, it's that's how we, the astrological viewpoint, we can, and again, this is kind of, we can theorize and predict what's going to happen. But also, you need to take notice of what's going on in the world when a transit happens or a big planet moves into a new sign. Then you get the rumblings, and you get the real picture in a way. So the two have to go hand in hand. It has to be within context of what's happening in the world at the time.
Mm.
So yeah, interesting times we live in,
Yeah, yeah,
Christina. Really.
yeah. There's an article on my website that I wrote in January of 2024, which makes a list of things that could happen. And it's interesting that most of them have already started to take shape.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so, go and have a look at that.
Mm.
Links below, I guess we could say. So, so Sagittarius season.
Yay, let's talk about
Let's talk.
Sagittarius. Good
Yeah.
Lord.
I love you, Sagittarius. You're cheerful and you're fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is, it's from Scorpio season to Sagittarius season. I often think in some ways coming out of the dark into the light. Scorpio season is so introvert in a way. It's so kind of analytical and intense. These deep, dark emotions fix water. And then we get to mutable fire. Sagittarius is wanting to fire arrows high into the sky to find the silver lining in the cloud. They have this incredible 11th hour luck, Sagittarians. And we need more of that right now. We need more of that kind of holding on to what's possible and to look ahead and to kind of reorient ourselves and be energized ourselves. In Sagittarius season, I think it's coming. It's coming at the right time.
It does that every year, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does.
He's Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter, the planet of expansion. And it's fiery Sagittarius and so full of ideas and conversation and philosophy and a desire to travel far and think big, and it's a really wonderful sign of expansion after that, as you say, after that incredible focus of Scorpio. And it's signified by a centaur, which I think is really interesting as well, because it's the first mystical, magical beast that we see in the zodiac. Everything else has been like a real thing, right? Scorpio or a Virgo or Virgin, or I always think that Libra is the kind of slightly strange symbol for Libra, that suddenly we have this object. But anyway, but anyway, we get to Sagittarius. We have a centaur, which is a magical half human and half horse.
Yeah.
Cantering us in towards the darkest day of the year in the north.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's, I often think Sagittarius is an interesting sign. It's like Jupiter, the planet is, because it touches on so many different areas, doesn't it? I mean, it's the global, it's foreign connections, it's also the philosopher, the teacher, but it's also the religious person. It's if you think, when I was thinking of who are famous Sagittarians, I immediately thought of Taylor Swift and Pope Francis.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, gosh, we can go from the sort of razzmatazz of Taylor to, Pope Francis, who's this
who's also razzmatazz, really, in a way. I mean, the definitely Jupiter is associated with popes, isn't it? Yes. And interestingly, but they both command huge audiences as well. And they're both really popular. So they have got that expansiveness that is Sagittarian.
Yes.
But the religious aspect is important.
Yeah. And also the other thing that, the Sagittarius, they leap into things, don't they? So there is this tendency. I mean, the ones I know, bless them, I love them to bits, but they can be quite tactless and blunt, and they just blurt things out. So there's this theme of controversy as well. They can kind of get carried away and go over the top. And I do just want to say that in September, Pope Francis, he aligned astrologers with satanic sects. I don't know if you know that, Christina, which I was like, no, come on. And he did get a lot of backlash. This was on Twitter as well, X. He did get a lot of backlash from astrologers. I didn't see it until after the event, kind of just saying, please, no.
Oh, Popey, don't do that, Francis. I kind of love him otherwise. No, because I love him because his first encyclical was The Earth Our Sister Cries Out, which so he was, it was
Mm.
about the planet.
Mm.
And I think that that was really powerful. So I don't know what he's thinking. Also, can I
Well,
just say they use astrologers all the time in the Vatican.
yeah,
That it seems to me, if you go to St. Peter's Square, there's sort of zodiacal things there. It's
yeah,
ridiculous to
yeah.
pretend that they're not doing stuff, astrological stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing he did say, which I thought was lovely, he said all religions are a path to God. I
Yeah,
thought that's a really nice thing for him to say. But of course, he's had a lot of backlash of that because, whatever your religion, it's your God, not everybody else's.
yeah.
So yeah, there's controversy there as well, isn't there? That, saying it as it is as
Saying it
well.
as he believes it. And there's a lot
Yeah,
about belief as well in
yeah.
it's not one of these sciency signs. It's one of these thinking outside the boxy signs, isn't
Mm,
it? It's thinking
mm,
big.
mm.
Yeah, no, I'm very keen on Sagittarius. I think it's a breath of hot, fiery, I wouldn't say fresh air exactly, but a hot, fiery excitement that comes
Mm,
in
mm, mm.
right now, and it's very necessary after the clenchedness of um,
Yeah.
Scorpio.
Mm,
So what about the month ahead, Sally? What are we going to look
mm,
at?
mm. Well, I mean, it's quite an interesting month, isn't it? Because Sagittarius wants this expansion, but we are moving into this really interesting retrograde phase as well. So, there's going to be a mix of the outer and the inner in a way, I feel. But I think it's a really important time for everybody to be considering the future and to be, really engaging actively with your life. And I think that fits both the sun in Sagittarius, where am I heading and why, and it fits these retrograde planets, stop for a while and reflect. So, that's kind of straight away, these two themes can work together.
I
But yeah,
agree.
we need to take a look at, maybe we look at a chart and,
Go on, but
shall we?
have some fun. I
Um,
mean, Mercury goes retrograde on the 26th, doesn't it?
yes,
In
yes,
in Sagittarius.
yes.
And it stays in Sagittarius through the whole retrograde. So this is a Sagittarian retrograde up until the 15th of December. So all of this
Mm,
period that we're talking about pretty much is
mm,
either under the shadow of the retrograde. The whole Sagittarian month is either under the shadow of the retrograde or coming out.
yeah,
And I quite like Mercury retrograde. So do you, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, yeah, I'm heading off on retreat.
yeah, boom, off you
You
go.
know, off I go.
What house is it in for you, that retrograde?
The retrograde, it's up in the ninth house.
Yeah, can I mention that you're also going to India,
You
which
can.
is a Sagittarian Mercury retrograde thing to do. You're actually flying,
Mm,
getting on a plane, you're
yeah,
flying off.
yeah.
So also people don't take that fear of flying thing too much. You're
No,
flying off to the other side of the world to go on retreat. That's
yeah,
perfect for Mercury
yeah.
retrograde in Sagittarius.
I know, divine timing. Couldn't be better, really, could it? So yeah, I mean, and there will be a lot of inner, this meditation yoga retreat. So, I'll be in this distant place doing the inner. But I think actually before we put up the new moon, should we talk a little bit about what's happening with Mercury and Jupiter?
Oh my God.
Because it's really interesting, isn't it? Mercury's in
Yeah.
Sagittarius, which is Jupiter's star sign. Jupiter's in Gemini, which is Mercury's star sign. They're in mutual reception and they're going to oppose one another, not once, but three times during this whole period. So, what's that about, Christina?
Well, I think it's a fire hose of information, of
Yeah.
misinformation, and also of revelations.
Mm,
So be prepared for just like massive news kind of tidal waves of words. And but I think I like mute this weirdly
mm-hmm,
because
mm-hmm,
I think from the point of view on a personal level, for example, for Gemini, Sagittarius, um, for uh, even for like Virgo, and we can go through the signs of how useful this is because actually this is the entire period again. So we've got the Mercury retrograde going on, we've got the exact oppositions.
mm,
Jupiter's not leaving Gemini. So we've got this going on the whole time. This is like the theme of the month, is this amazing axis, and it's called the information. I call it the information axis. A lot of people do. That Gemini Sagittarius one. So if you're a writer or if you're a speaker or whatever, you may find yourself incredibly busy doing that stuff. For anybody who is in the words game, I mean, it's interesting, say, for example, for Librans, because it's going to be across the third and the ninth. Or for Aries, like you, Sally, it's going to be across that axis as well. Anybody who's involved with words and communications in your work, you're going to be really busy, and you may be really inspired, and it's like a flow. That's what I feel. That's how I see it. I think the flow is incredible for creative and expansive words. I'm
going to play devil's advocate a little.
Okay, go.
Because I think, and just, I suppose, things to watch out for with this. It is a lot of words and ideas, but it could all just end up being hot air going nowhere. It needs something to harness it in. And the other thing, be aware that people will be, everyone will be tapping into this. So some people could promise a lot. They could be terribly enthusiastic about things, but not deliver.
I agree. I mean, so, that is the neg, is the negging side of it. And may I say, one of the things it's really interesting, this idea of like anchoring, this opposition. Saturn in Pisces anchors the opposition.
Yes.
Okay. What does that mean? It means that Saturn is like in sort of like halfway in between, right? And it's holding it down. It's holding it firm. Saturn has just gone direct. I can't remember what day it goes direct, but it's gone direct.
Yeah, it was on the 15th of November.
Yeah, so it's going to hold the line, right?
Yeah.
Saturn says no, right? So listen to your Pisces friends when they say no. They, and there is this, like I said, I feel like it's a tidal wave of words.
Yeah.
And so you do need to be able to kind of hold back that tidal wave of information, misinformation. I think there are going to be a lot of lies flying around. Both of these planets, and this is really interesting, both of these planets are said to be in detriment, or is it in fall? They're supposed to be in bad signs when they're in, but because they're in mutual reception, that lifts them up and stops it being a bad sign. I just want to sort of caveat that by saying signs that are bad for them, not bad signs in general. I want to caveat by saying, in my experience, the whole idea of detriment and fall is not really like that. Actually, I know loads of people who are professional speakers with Mercury and Sagittarius, professional writers. So actually, they've taken that Mercury, which is supposed to be so awful, and turned it into something amazing. And also the same with Jupiter in Gemini. Great teachers, great people who've got a lot of information that they need to share.
Yeah, and it's kind of like know about where to channel it when it's in that sign, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, it will work well in these ways, just as you're saying. I think the other thing with this, this whole combination, Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn, as well, I think it's really important not to fall into fear, which is one of Saturn's, negative sides. But to kind of be faithful, keep the faith that things, will work out, or all those ideas you have, at some point you'll find a way to kind of channel them, harness them into something meaningful. So it's when you do feel like, going into Mercury retrograde phase, sometimes you feel like, what's going on? It's all over the place. Really have faith that things will perhaps come together and you'll be able to harness things well. So there's this theme of faith and fear as well, I think, within it, and not fall into the fear, but, keep looking forward.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I really notice in our world right now is fear.
Yeah, agreed.
Actually, I think we're really there's this kind of existential fear. Look what happened, and we have very good reason to be afraid. We have terrible wars, and the climate, look what happened in Spain. 200 and more than 200 people died in one
Yeah.
flood.
Yeah. I
It
know. I
bang
know.
instantly.
Mm.
So people's fears are
Yeah.
grounded in something, but at the same
Yeah.
time, they're mystical, which is quite an interesting place to be.
Yeah.
And the information coming from both sides in this Gemini Sagittarius thing, maybe sort of pushing your fear button
Mm.
and wafting you back and forth. So you
Mm.
need to hold the line and actually think about to yourself and think a bit much bigger
Yeah.
in terms of faith and also ethics and what is right and wrong.
Yeah.
Because I think also that comes under question with this. These are very
Yeah.
questioning signs.
Yeah, and it's
They're,
good to question, isn't it? This is the
yeah,
thing. Don't just believe what you read. Don't just believe what you hear. Really come back to that, that as human beings, we have that facility to question, to be discerning, to consider what's right for us as well. So I think that's really key with what's going on in the
yeah,
world as well at the moment, isn't it? And moving forward, question things.
and basic ethics are really important.
Yeah.
It's
Basic
not,
morals.
yeah, basic morals. The morals, like what would you, what do you really think? What would you, do unto others? The golden rule is really what we come back to: is do unto others as you would have done to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it seems to me that that's quite an interesting place to land with this.
Mm, mm,
Um, you know, it, both, and what we were saying earlier was you were talking about Sagittarius as a religious sign
mm,
that, and the part of that, the reason it's a religious sign is because it's a philosophical sign.
mm.
So, and it's also about these big organized faith structures.
Yeah.
So we have, that's the Sagittarius side of the current pattern in the sky, and then the Pisces side is much more mystical, and more, in a way, it's kind of a combination of
Mm,
universal and very personal. So God is
mm,
one for Pisces, but God is also inside for,
mm,
that's how we know that.
mm,
um
mm. It's kind of like I mean, often it's difficult to talk about, isn't it? Because it triggers
yeah,
people when if you use the word God, for example, people are like, Jesus, no, I can't say that really. But anyway, I just did. Um,
yeah, you did.
yeah. But religion and spirituality, there is a difference between them, but they can be united as well. So, and I think that's often, that Sagittarius, Pisces, Jupiter rules them both. So, it can be accessed in different ways as well. I was going to, and I don't know whether this is helpful, but I'm going to say it anyway. I had it sort of makes sense to me about all of this. I had a really bad dream last night, as I was talking to
I
Christine
think you
about it.
should say it. Actually, it's a really fascinating dream.
Oh, it was all about, I mean, it was really about the fear of the patriarchy. It was a dream where, as a woman, we were in a group and there was these men who were going around touching certain women. If you were touched, you knew you were going to be killed. I mean,
Yay.
I woke up so fearful with that. I mean, I really fell into the fear and, thought, okay, so I mean, as often I do meditate in the morning. So I kind of meditated. And then thankfully today, I also had an online yoga class first thing. So, there was this chance to kind of shake off the fear, to ground, this grounding. You can actually do it through the body as well, I think. You can ground yourself through the body, like come back to yourself. And then at that, and I knew we were podcasting. It's like, right, I'm not bringing that fear in. I ended up feeling quite energized. So, there's very practical things sometimes you can do to help with this on that, just getting through life.
I like what you just said. I think actually this is really useful and important. First of all, oh my God, the dream. I
I
think that's
know.
very, it is quite Saturn in Pisces, right? So that was a collective dream. And also,
Mm,
women have got a lot to be frightened of now. So it's not
yeah.
crazy. Look what's happening around the world. There is a huge, speaking of a wave of information, there's a wave of misogyny that
Mm,
is going to overwhelm us and drown us if we're not careful.
mm, mm,
So of course you had a dream like that in a way, and it makes sense. In this triangle that we're talking about, this T square, which is from Sagittarius to Gemini to Pisces, there is another element, which is Virgo. It's the empty side of this. And Sagittarius is fire, Gemini is air, Pisces is water, and Virgo is earth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's the earthing, it's the grounding, it's the body, it's the
Mm.
ritual. And one of the responses to the whole thing is ritual. So there's the yoga, and grounding, right? So even that means like eating well within all of this craziness is eat well this month.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a month of feasting,
Yeah.
but after all, but also eat well.
Yeah. And look after the body.
Absolutely.
Rest, sleep, walk, you know. You know, to be human beings, there are certain things that need to be put in place to really help us. So yeah, I agree really with that, Virgo. Should we go on to the new moon?
Yeah, go.
Okay.
So where are we? We've done Mercury goes retrograde on the 26th. Then we come up to this new moon on the 1st of December, which Sally's putting the chart up right now.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So can I. So can everyone else who's watching on YouTube. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're nearly at 1,000 subscribers, and that'd be fab if we can get there. Just putting that out there.
Yeah. And get your friends to get your mum to subscribe too, you know.
And your dog. Anyone who can press the button.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what do you think of this new moon then?
I like it. You know, I like it because the sun and moon are at 9 degrees Sagittarius, and they're picking up a lovely trine to that Mars in Leo. So that is, for me, that's great. That's something where you can break through. That new moon is bringing something new to the Mars-Pluto opposition, which we talked about last month and which is still in play. But it's bringing something new to it, and it allows you to kind of break through, I think, with that trine aspect. So, you know, for Scorpio, Mars in Leo, career sector; for Aries, Mars in Leo in your creative sector. So it's it's really adding a bit of power to that Mars. That's how I see it. Although there's other stuff going on, I mean, obviously, but that's what immediately I saw. You know, there's harness that Mars energy before it slows down and stops.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? This is the new moon just before the Mars. So Mars is basically stationing pretty much, isn't it? I think it gets to it crawls along 1 degree. So that's interesting. So Mars is stopping and saying hello to this new moon.
Yep.
Before going backwards and, you know, retreading the path. And interestingly enough, Mars went into Leo the day before the US election.
Yeah.
And
it did.
Trump has Leo rising. And he also has Mars and Leo. And so does Kamala Harris has Mars and Leo, by the way. This is one of the reasons that it's not that straight, just, you know, straightforward. But, and then it's going to go back into Cancer again, you know, as it goes backwards, when it goes retrograde, which is interesting. We'll get to that and see. I think it's in January. But this Mars is stationing in Leo. And I think, again, and it's making this beautiful trine to the new moon, and it's also aspecting, I mean, some people, astrologers don't accept that it's an aspect, but I do. It's aspecting the nodes, right? The north node very tightly. So there's a kind of grand trine going on between very significant points in the sky. There's a fiery grand trine. So things are happening. Action is being taken. Things are about to set off. I think this is a moment of pause at the new moon on the 1st of December. And then things are going to take off quite deeply. There's going to be a lot of revision because this is under there's going to be a lot of unmaking of things because it's under these retrogrades. The new moon is not close enough to be called conjunct to the to Mercury, but it's in the same sign, and Mercury's going to come back to that point. So it's like, I think it's quite a thoughtful new moon, which is to stop, think, see what happens. And well, you're going to be meditating. So are you going to be there meditating already by then, by the 1st of December?
I'll be on my way home, actually.
Okay. But I think it's a sort of stop, think, pause, take a breath, and feel your inner fire at this point. Because what is the inner fire? We've also had this long period of the nodes being in Libra and Aries, which can be very argumentative. When I say long period, I mean the last 18 months. And, we talk about polarization. There you go. Aries, Libra. And they will be shifting.
Yeah. They shift in January as well, don't they?
Yeah, they will be shifting. So this is the very last little bit. And it's maybe to pause and think, what has that polarization been doing to me personally? Should I shift my ideas and try and, should I, and this is the Sagittarian thing, should I shift my ideas and take a step back and look at a bigger picture and try and get out of the small mindset? Or the oppositional mindset.
Yeah, it's kind of it's sort of complex, isn't it? I think it's I like what you said about the inner fire. I think the inner fire is really strong during this new moon. So what are you passionate about? Where are your passions? And I do think there's an importance on this new moon, as there always is on the new moon in Sagittarius, of really, fire off some arrows far into the future and line some new things up and have your gaze on what next. It's kind of exploratory because Mercury's retrograde, but it's kind of, I feel like rather than just heading for one thing, it's kind of shoot off a lot of arrows, see which ones land. Not all of them will.
I agree with that. I mean, I would do it, as I always say, the day after, but I agree about it's experimental, isn't it?
It's experimental.
It's not like this is definitely the way forward, and that fits with the Mars going retrograde too.
But it's like don't do nothing on this new moon, and on the back of it, as you say, don't do nothing. I think it's just it is a time to take some action. I think it's a time to take some action personally. You're devil's advocating me.
I am. I would.
Good.
I would, like I said, I would pause at the new moon and wait. Maybe a day or two. Just I would be gathering information and listening.
I think I am talking from this. I know what Mars retrogrades are like for me, because Mars 2 signs are Aries and Scorpio, and I'm Sun Scorpio, Aries ascendant, and I often find them really quite tricky phases. I mean, they take place every 2 years. They last for approximately 10 weeks. This one's even longer. It's December 6th to February 24th, for goodness sake. And I find them quite frustrating times. Often the themes are that I'm not in control. Someone else has got the upper hand, or there's something like that goes on. I end up in a situation where I'm a bit stuck, and it's like, I don't want to be doing this. And there's this inner kind of angst going on. So I think that's why I'm looking at the Mars on this new moon and saying, it's not yet retrograde. Go Mars.
I'm kind of thinking it's already there.
Okay.
And also, can I say, let's just talk about the Mars retrograde, because what you said is really important, which is for people who are Aries and people who are Scorpio, Mars is your ruling planet, right? Especially if it's your ascendant. And when it goes retrograde, which it does, it is time. You can't really push ahead with things that could, things are not under your control. And both of those signs are quite, I wouldn't say, Scorpio is pretty controlling, but
it is.
Aries likes to at least go like surge ahead with stuff. That's what Aries does, is forge
Yeah.
ahead. So it's very frustrating for you.
Mm,
Uh,
mm,
and the way to look at it may be that a Mars retrograde is a time to sort of go inside. Um, and I think this one's really interesting for Aries rising because
mm,
it's in it starts off anyway in the fifth house for you. It's in the
mm,
house of, secret affairs, right? A
mm,
Mars retrograde through the fifth house, which it will be for, let's see, it will be for Aries and then Pisces actually,
mm.
it sometimes is a secret affair, or
Yeah.
something refiring a passion, a secret passion, or going deeper into something that is wonderful.
Or, I mean, I'm going to say there's a pregnancy that you have to keep quiet as well,
Yeah,
because it's the fifth house of, you know,
kids.
kids. Um, but but yeah, it's an intriguing one, isn't it?
Mhm.
There's also the other way I look at Mars retrograde is sometimes it's a time, it's the war planet, so it's actually the time to down your weapons, re-strategize, and get things ready, kind of work things out, ready to take action again when Mars turns direct. And also, this Mars retrograde is obviously going to be really important for Leos, really important for Cancerians, because it's moving back through your sign. So, what are you having to rework, or, what are you preparing for next to kind of leap into action? In the first house, I mean, it's often very personal stuff, personal issues you're dealing with. So you could be changing a lot about who you are, how you want the world to see you when you've got Mars retrograde in your sign. There's something new that's going to emerge from that when Mars turns direct.
And it's give yourself the time to do that, you know. So you've
Yeah.
got a lot of time until the end of February. The
Mm,
other really fascinating thing about this particular Mars retrograde is it's going to be making oppositions to Pluto again.
yeah.
So we had at the beginning of November, end of October, we had Mars opposite to Pluto, but Mars was in Cancer and Pluto was in Capricorn.
Mm,
And now we're going to have Mars opposite Pluto in Aquarius and Leo. And this feels so different to me.
okay.
So we had the Cancer Capricorn thing, which is this tribal, hierarchical, it's the mommy daddy axis.
Mm,
Um, and this is not the mommy daddy axis. This is a much more kind of,
mm,
it's basically, if we were going to kind of boil it down to simple words, it's community, which is Aquarian, and
mm,
the individual, which is um, Leo, is your unique expression of yourself in the world.
mm.
And those two things are in conflict. Um, and I'm seeing that already a little bit in the certain restrictions that people are experiencing about their personal freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's a
Mm.
struggle around personal freedom with this.
There really is. And, this, in a way, this intensifies this Mars retrograde, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because, there is this, like I said, one of the things is where do I not have control? Where do I not have power? It's going to be very black and white in a way with this Pluto opposing the Mars throughout. But that Mars is stronger in Leo. It's good in a fire sign. Like Cancer, it's trickier very often, but in a fire sign, it's still got some strength. Maybe this inner fire that it needs to discover, the inner power. How am I going to kind of regain my strength and regain my power? Maybe that's going to be a theme of this retrograde phase.
Fire in the belly, isn't it?
Fire in the
That's what,
belly, yeah,
and
yeah,
actually it's getting that together. And I can see that, in certain places there's a lot of fire in the belly. you know
mm,
I'm
mm,
just thinking about the that woman in Iran
yeah,
who took her clothes off
yeah,
and walked through her campus when she was being
mm,
harassed. She's still missing, isn't she?
She is. She
Um,
is. I mean, how brave and courageous, knowing, what the outcome is likely to be. She's still made that stand, which feels very much like this kind of astrology moving forward, isn't it? I think there's going to be more people making an individual stance and saying, no, I'm not having this, to that
and
power and oppression that's going on in the world.
and sometimes the sort of, and I find it quite, sometimes with martial arts, for instance, there's this thing of like of retreat. Sometimes is the biggest form of is the best thing to do when you're in a battle. And sometimes that's true with a Mars retrograde as well, which is to be soft, you
Mm,
know,
mm,
to be soft, and then because you're gathering your strength to push forward,
mm,
like a wave,
mm,
like a wave pulls back and then it comes back stronger. So that's, and the other thing about the Mars Pluto opposition, so I think the next time is that they are actually definitely opposite, is like beginning of January.
yeah.
But this opposition is basically the whole time that Mars is retrograde. It's like now, it's happening
Mm,
now.
mm,
It's when Pluto goes into Aquarius. As Pluto goes into Aquarius, it starts to make an opposition to Mars immediately,
mm,
which was the 15th, I think,
mm,
of November. And it's that this is an ongoing tension across the sky for everybody. So it will be somewhere in your chart. So
mm,
for Scorpios, this is across the parental axis. So your
mm,
parents may be fighting,
mm,
or you may be fighting your parents. Um, for Aquarius and Leo, obviously, it's across the axis of relationships for you. You may be actually confronting something that you've got to face the dark, Leo.
mm,
And how do you
mm,
face the dark? By finding your inner light. And that's what this I
mm.
think for Leos it's really interesting um to see, how can you deal with this, because you, my dear Leos, are going to have Pluto in your opposite sign until 2043. So
Mm.
you're going to have to figure out how that's going to work for you in a positive way.
Yeah, and the other thing to say with this is, I mean, this is, what the oppositions in astrology can teach us, isn't
Mm.
it? I mean, it's a great teacher about life, because you get these polarizations in the oppositions, and how do you deal with them? Well, you have to look at both. You have to look at both axes and kind of try and enable them to work together. I mean, and we see that in life. It's kind of, a good team has opposites within the team, different skills, different that can complement one another. I mean, the other interesting thing with this is that Venus is in the mix, because she's going to conjunct the Pluto on December the 7th. She's going to move into Aquarius just after Mars turns retrograde. And then we're going to have a Venus Mars polarity as well on, I think it's December the 10th. Yeah, the 12th, they're opposite. So again, that's, you can have this opposition, or you can try and bring them together. And how do
Well,
we go on?
well, in astrologically, the seventh house, which is the opposite house to the first house, it's the opposition is the place of allies and friends and enemies, all those things that are
Yes,
one on one,
yes, yeah.
right? So if you think about that, so the opposition is yes, it's a thing of enmity for
Mm,
sure, but it's
mm,
a thing of friendship as well. So your friends are symbolized by those planets that are opposite to you, and so are your enemies. And so it's better to make friends with Pluto if you're a
yeah.
Leo. And
Mm,
what does that mean? Well, definitely means making friends with your shadow. Okay.
yeah.
Um, and what is this, the Leo, the Leo Aquarius thing is, I'm special, I'm not special.
Mm,
I'm
mm,
unique, I'm not unique. I'm one of the crowd, but I'm different.
mm,
And it's like, how do you act in community, but retain your uniqueness? A lot of
mm,
Leos and Aquarians are like on committees. We've talked about this before.
mm, mm, mm.
And that's not because Leos always want to take over, but because they have a passion to be part of that opposite sign, to be part of the people. That's
Mm.
what Leos would like. And then, they get on the committee and they find that they're actually running it. So,
Yeah. 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 I just want to add something to that. You talked about making friends with your shadow side, but I think there's also, it gives an opportunity, I'm going to say this, to make friends with your enemies,
yeah.
or at least, and to make friends with your enemies is very often trying to understand them. I've often in my own life, when there's someone there's something you'd get triggered by people. And particularly if it's someone I'm around quite a lot, I think, okay, let's get to know them. If you get to know a person, then you can kind of understand what the triggers are. You can understand more about where they're coming from. There's a chance to work together better. So it is, there's make friends with your shadow side, but maybe this is also an opportunity to make friends with your enemies. And wouldn't that be a nice way of kind of moving forward with Pluto and Aquarius? So there's not more division, and we start to really make an effort to understand other people, to be more tolerant, to be less judgmental. That's another way of looking at it.
Oh, no, I agree with you. I like that. And I also like that because it is making the Mars is making the trine aspect to the nodes, which are in Libra and Aries, which is the terribly polarizing Libra Aries, as we've seen, and warlike. And just to, more complex astrological symbolism, it means that Mars is ruling the North Node in Aries. And when it's retrograde, it's weaker. So we may see, for just praying, that we might see some weakening of the aggression that's been happening around the world. And I also agree about understanding people. This is the issue, is the misunderstanding of, I think that was a huge issue in the American election, was different groups just not understanding each other and actually not listening. And not seeing another point of view. And that's because, and this fits in also with this wall of information that we're about to have to deal with during all this time as well, is because there are different information sources that people are using. And that's the key, is like, where are people getting their information? And why is it so wildly different? Are you getting your information from the minister who's preaching to you at church, or are you getting your information from some mad YouTube site? It's how information is filtered. What's the medium of the information?
And then
the medium is the message. In fact,
the medium is the message, and then do this questioning. Don't just take what you hear at face value either. I think that's really, really important moving forward through Sagittarius season. That be philosophical, be inquiring. Go on.
And I think it's useful just to think of structure when you're questioning, not vague questioning. It's like, I don't believe anything in the mainstream media. Not a useful thing to think, but to question it is quite useful. And think, well, what are my core values? What are my core values? And when we talk about core values, real values, Venus is the planet that is associated quite often with value, the value of something. How much is it worth?
And
it's about to make this conjunction to Pluto. It does it every year. She does it every year. They have this confab. But this is in Aquarius. I think they did it last year already once. But this is in Aquarius. They're having a meeting at the 0 degrees of Aquarius. And that's the moment to say, what are my core values? I know what are my community's core values? And how is that in conflict with Mars?
Yeah. And really important, this as well, just to pull it back to the sun signs for Taurus and Libra, because Venus is your planet. So, there's something when that Venus conjuncts that Pluto on December the 7th, there may be something, what are you standing for? There may be an ultimatum. It's for Taurus, it's in your career sector. You could leave a job because of differing values. Or, for Libra, it's in your 5th house. It's about kind of romance. It's about children, creativity. What are you taking a stand for when that Venus-Pluto conjoins? Sometimes things can fall apart when Pluto comes in. But it feels powerful, doesn't it, with it opposite that Mars?
Very much so. I mean, it's pretty sexy as well. Just put it like that. That is a very sexy combination. The Venus Pluto
Yeah,
often is.
yeah.
The Mars is, that's also fire and passion, and Venus Pluto is an intense obsession. So for some people, it's definitely going to be you walk into a room, you see the person, and you desire them, I
Mm,
think.
mm.
Especially, say, again, Librans are going to be, there's
Yeah.
something happening there. There may be something happening.
And it may be that you desire someone, and there's this element of danger, or you shouldn't really be going there as well.
That
That might be something that plays out during this, Mars retrograde season. So I'm going to stop the share of this one.
Mhm.
Um,
Let's have a
uh,
look at the full moon, which is now we're kind
yeah,
of leading up to that. One thing that
yeah.
I think is quite interesting during this whole political period is that Ceres, which is a asteroid associated with democracy. Faye Blake has written some interesting stuff
Mm,
about this.
mm,
Um, you can find her website. I think it's just called Faye Blake. Um, she associates Ceres with democracy, and I think she has a very good argument for that. And it's interesting that Ceres is going to be involved in this Venus-Pluto Ceres conjunction at 0
mm,
degrees of Aquarius, which is the same degree where the inauguration is going to be. It's always the degree of the inauguration in the United States. So just pointing that out, that there is some major shift going on in democracy.
mm,
Um, and some of it, and it's not necessarily all bad because Venus is involved, but we'll see. So
mm.
keep an eye out on that as a sort of theme there of
Interesting.
about values, democratic values.
Mm,
What are they
mm.
actually? Um, yeah. So have we
Okay.
got the full moon up? Yeah.
Yes, we've got the full moon up. So Sun, Sagittarius, Moon, Gemini. And I suppose the key aspect with this full moon is there's a square to Neptune in Pisces. It's interesting that Saturn was kind of more involved in the new moon, but we get to Neptune, which is in later degrees Pisces. And Neptune does turn direct also during Sagittarius season, again on the 7th. So that Neptune, I mean, therefore it feels quite kind of dreamy, doesn't it? Idealistic, I want to say, this full moon, time for contemplation. It's interesting as well that Mercury is still retrograde. It actually only turns direct after the full moon, but on the same day. So there's something, I don't know, it feels like a misty-eyed full moon to me. What are you kind of,
Yeah. I mean, I also
yearning for?
I feel that this full moon is continuing the theme of the Mercury Jupiter opposition, if you see
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean.
yeah.
Because it's across that axis, the information
Mm,
axis. And I
mm,
think there may be some huge piece of news that comes out at that
mm,
point.
mm.
I also think, just on a really um, simple level, is that this full moon looks like a massive tide, right? High tide. And I mean that literally,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
in wherever you have high tide, Venice, where I was in September. I'd be curious to see how high the tide comes. So and in this time of climate change,
Mm,
this becomes quite important. The new and full moon tides, and this one looks like a really big one.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Neptune in Pisces, water, isn't it? Not just tides. I think it's kind of more flooding as well.
Yeah, that's what
I
I
mean,
mean.
it's yeah, yeah.
I would be,
On this full moon.
wary if I had a place that was prone to flooding. I would
Mm,
prepare for that, and
mm,
probably for the one in January. But this one looks like it could be quite big.
mm. And it's always a theme, isn't it, on the full moons in a way?
Yeah, it
Because the
is.
tides, the moon rules the tides, and it's often I mean, the full moon is dramatic and beautiful to behold, but also the water, the sea is swirling and, back and forth as well at the full moons. everything is heightened, emotions heightened. They can be quite dramatic full moons. Time to kind of howl to the moon, go wild. I do like a full moon swim, I have to say.
Be careful, Sally, because
I will be
very high
careful.
tide.
I will be careful. And if I do it, I tend to go with a huge group of people. Maybe not so many in December. There's usually more in the summer. We'll see.
Yeah.
It'll be a chilly one in the UK if I do that.
And the nodes are getting very close to that Neptune as well, and that suggests an unleashing of water to me too. I mean, you don't have to be really an astrologer to know that this is what happened in Spain this summer, what happened around the world, actually, in Central Europe, what happened, I think, in Central Asia as well. The water is breaking out of bounds, and that's a continuing theme. And I think that's to do with Neptune and Pisces. Obviously, it's been there a long time, though. It's also Saturn in Pisces.
Yeah, and they will be. I mean, they're moving out of Pisces together, aren't they? Over the next couple of years, and always it's like when a major planet enters a star sign, leaves a star sign, it's intensified. It gets intensified. I mean, on a personal level, this feels. I know it falls at the weekend, this full moon. I think it's a good weekend to escape. I really do with Neptune. Not in a, Neptune does rule kind of addictive tendencies. So not in that way. I mean, you might be partying and having a good time, then why not? But, what are you going to lose yourself in as well? I mean, Neptune is photography, it's film, it's the things that create beauty and emotion in life. So use this full moon for that. It's kind of like escape in a way. There's an escape going on, perhaps, from what's happening in your personal life or out in the world on this full moon.
Yeah, it's mystical, isn't it?
It's very mystical.
And that the full moon is across this media axis. Really.
Yeah.
So, go see a really, really great movie that makes you cry a lot. Then go for a full moon swim with Sally. And
thank you.
And make sure she doesn't get swept off, please.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think it's a continuation of that Mercury retrograde, Jupiter, that whole massive energy bashing back and forth across that media axis. Pulled in by Neptune, which is art and lies, which is kind of cool. It's that combination, music and imagination. Right?
And the other thing just to say on this full moon is that, a full moon can bring illumination. It brings matters to completion or culmination. Mercury's going to turn direct on this full moon. So, that often there's news that comes to light or information that comes to light that can be a revelation. It's something awakening you to something new as well. So I think this is a pivotal time in Sagittarius season.
I agree. It's a really important day, isn't it? And the day
It
after.
is.
And then after that, Mercury comes storming back through Sagittarius. It'll come back and make that opposition to Jupiter. I don't know which day that is, but it's going back over all the ground, and quite often, you have this, it's a really dramatic Mercury retrograde, I think, this year. I mean, this particular one, Mercury retrogrades happen 3 times a year, but some are more or less, and this is a more one. It's going to be a series of revelations probably after this full moon, don't you think?
Yeah.
Oh, and then this happened, this a series of stories.
Yeah.
So
it's powerful.
We've been talking for a long time. I think we kind of need
to Mercury, Jupiter.
Yeah. And I mean, how would you characterize this Sagittarius season, Sally, in a nutshell?
In a nutshell, I mean, I just listen to the podcast. In a nutshell, I mean, keep coming back to yourself with this. It's busy out there, isn't it? It's busy out there. Be aware of that, what you're questioning, what your values are. Keep coming back to yourself. I think that's going to be really vital moving through this next month. That's what I'm going to leave as a takeaway.
And I would also say I agree with that completely. I would also say, wait, don't believe everything just now.
Mm,
See how things start to unfurl.
mm,
You know, don't jump to conclusions. I
okay.
guess that's what I'm
Okay.
saying, because there's so much information out there. It's going to be very hard to filter.
Yeah, and hopefully during this full moon and Mercury turning direct together, then there'll be a bit more clarity coming in
Yeah.
during that period. But we'll see. And then we're into Capricorn season next time.
Yeah.
Lovely Capricorns.
So see you next month. Oh, we have a one of our mini podcasts out right now, which is Taylor Swift, and
Sagittarius.
we have another one coming up, a sort of Christmas special one coming out
Mm,
on the 8th of December in the middle of this.
mm.
Um, so see you next month. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and all of those things that are very helpful for us. And have a great holiday season.
Yep. Have fun. See you the other side. Bye.
Bye.